This is Talking Law on Radio 97, as we do every Thursday morning. Despina Prialo from Prialo Legal in Runaway Bay. And if you have a question that you'd like answered on this program, all you need to do is put it in an email. The best address to send it to is breakfast97@superradionetwork.com.au. That is breakfast97@superradionetwork.com.au.
And this morning we're talking retail, which we haven't in a little while. And obviously it's a hot market all around the place. So we're talking specifically about selling a business. If the business folds after the new owner has taken over, who's liable now, Despina?
Yes, so a very important topic to go through. So when you sell your business, and if it's a retail shop business specifically, so we're not talking about commercial leasing, although there are some important aspects to that as well, but specifically we're talking about retail shop businesses. So if you're going to sell your business, you will start negotiations with a particular buyer, and what will happen is that if you enter a contract, a business sale agreement, typically, then that contract is always going to be subject to the landlord consenting to this new buyer coming in and taking over the lease. So you can appreciate if you own a business and it's you're leasing from a landlord, then you are currently in a lease. So then if you're selling to someone, that particular buyer typically takes over the existing lease that's in place. And for them to be able to not only buy your business and settle it with you, they can't settle that with you until the landlord who owns the premises actually consents to that new buyer coming in and taking over the lease. And the reason why they have to consent is because the landlord originally vetted you as the tenant and said, okay, I'm going to let this person come in and lease the premises. So if you're selling to someone else, they will have their own checks and balances to make sure from their perspective that they like the person coming in, they vetted them financially and otherwise, they might ask for business references, character references, etc., to then eventually, hopefully, give their consent to allow this person to come in and take over the existing lease and become the new tenant under that lease.
Yeah. I guess this is something that could happen quite a bit if when you sell the business, you would expect to be able to walk away and, that's the end of it. That's certainly the end of your liability. But that's not necessarily the case, apparently.
It's not necessarily the case, and this is what I want to focus on this morning. So if you want to sell your business to someone else, so sometimes what happens is people do get into the retail shop trade, if I could call it that, so whether it's a cafe or a restaurant, and sometimes they're a bit of a novice, so they actually haven't done this before, and they come in a little bit inexperienced thinking, I'm going to own a cafe, it sounds like a lot of fun and it's really exciting, but they don't actually have a lot of experience, and that's all well and good, but if they come in and the landlord's vetted them, you've signed a contract, and then you settle with them, but 6 months down the track or 12 months, what if that particular buyer that's come in and is now the new owner and the tenant, what if they fold? What if they go bust? What if they haven't run the business properly and then they have to close down? You might think when you settle with that person at settlement, you've sold them the business and you get a settlement date and they pay you the money, you might think, okay, I've walked away now, my hands are clean, I don't have to worry about this lease, these premises or this landlord anymore, I've got my money and on to my next venture. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. And what you need to do is cover off on a couple of points we'll talk about to make sure that when you do settle with that new owner, your liability under that lease that you've assigned to the new owner with the landlord's consent, that you are fully released from all liability as the tenant, so as your business and your company that you might have, and if you've given personal guarantees, that those liabilities under that personal guarantee are also removed. So it doesn't necessarily automatically happen. And I think a lot of business owners assume that it does when they sell.
Yep.
So how do you avoid it then? What do you do? Because to me, once you think you're clean, you sold your business, you got your money, it's sweet. But oh my gosh, imagine 2 years later getting a knock on the door being like, you remember that cafe you owned? Yeah, we want some money.
Exactly right. So we're talking, remember, about retail shop leases and retail shop premises only. So, and the reason why I keep harping on about that is because when you do buy or sell retail shop businesses, as I said before, you're governed by the Retail Shop Leases Act. And in that act, there are a lot of important provisions. And one of the provisions is a Section 58. Okay. And in that section, it talks about where you are released from liability under the lease once settlement goes through, if that new buyer, which becomes the tenant, if they default under that lease. So to make sure that you are released, there are a couple of things that have to happen. One, you have to give the disclosure statement that I talked about before. As a person that's selling, so an assignor, you have to give your own disclosure statement to that buyer coming in. And you have to give them a copy of the lease. So you might think, oh yeah, that sounds all pretty easy, but when you're negotiating, things happen pretty quick sometimes. So you might have a client come to you and say, okay, well, we've done a deal, let's sign the contract. You can't just do that straight away, because under the Act, it talks about giving a buyer coming in, an assignee, 7 days. Okay, and that's really important for you to follow that and comply with, to be able to get released down the track. So what it says in a nutshell is, if you've given a disclosure statement to an incoming buyer and it's been, completed correctly and it's accurate, it's not misleading, and you've given them a copy of the lease, and you do that at least 7 days before you sign that contract with them, then this section will apply, which means you can be released from liability down the track. So it's really important. And sometimes that 7 days is missed. Sometimes people don't know about it. So sometimes they come to you and, I've already signed a business sale agreement. So they've come to you and they've already done it without advice. Or they're rushing you and they say, okay, quick, let's get an agreement signed. We've negotiated the deal, got to get it done today. And you go, well, hang on, wait a minute. Have you given them a copy of the lease already? And have you given them a disclosure statement that's accurate? Now, if they say to you, oh, yes, well, we can do that afterwards. Well, no, not if you want to be released from your liability under that lease after settlement if that tenant defaults. So you have to wait this 7 days. It's really critical.
Yeah. So does this happen very often, do you know?
Yeah, it does. It does. And a lot of owners that sell in retail shop premises don't know about it. So it's really, really important to cover this off. And it's really important to wait that 7 days. So right at the very beginning where you're thinking of selling and you find someone, an interested buyer, right? Even if you haven't nutted out all the terms, give them a copy of the lease straight away in an email, and fill out this disclosure statement, sign it, and give it to them at the same time. Then you know you've covered it off and it's all done and dusted, and then you'll be safe under this provision. So when you settle, you won't have to worry about this liability hovering over your head so much. It's really, really important to cover that off.
So if the owner has consented to having this person allowed to take over the business, how can you still be liable?
Well, you can be if you don't cover it off in this particular section in the Act, as I said before. So you might think, okay, well, if the landlord consents to this new person coming in, they've vetted them financially and otherwise, why can the landlord then sue me down the track if they've consented and they've vetted this person? And quite clearly, the landlord will want to get their money any which way they can. So if that tenant defaults, they will come after you as the previous tenant unless you can cover off what I said before about getting your liability released correctly at settlement by doing these steps at the very, very beginning.
Make sure you're prepared, kids. That's advice
And
there from...
good legal advice too.
Yes, good legal advice from Despina Priala there from boutique law firm Priala Legal. And if people want to get in touch with you directly, Despina, where can they go?
Yes, they can phone the office 55291 294 and talk to myself or my lovely staff about any queries they have. They can send an email to info@prialalegal.com.au. And of course, if they've missed this segment, they're all uploaded on YouTube for viewers later on.
Fantastic. Thank you so much again, Despina. We'll talk next week.
Thanks, Despina.
See you then.